Jimmy, what do you love, like, and have concern about this this basketball team?
Well, I love Cadet. I think he's a tremendous player. I think he's their best offensive weapon right now. So I'm really high on Cadet. I liked what I saw in Tennessee's first game in Maui with Adu. He ended up with a double-double. He had 14 points. He had 11 rebounds. And now I didn't think he played that well the first half, but I thought in the second half against Syracuse, he played really well. One of my concerns right now, a little bit, and I hope I'm not saying this is a concern in 2 or 3 weeks. I don't like what I'm seeing out of Ziegler. He had 6 turnovers against Syracuse. He played out of control. Now, the last 5 or 6 minutes of the game, he played pretty well. Then he comes back and right off the bat, he against Purdue, he has a turnover, and they benched him because he was playing out of control. He played better when he came back in. I'm thinking and hoping for his sake that's just rust from the ACL. I do think that Gainey is going to be a better player than he missed a ton of shots last night. Then he actually hit a couple of threes that were key for Tennessee. So I like that. I like Awaka. He gets after it. He's a really good rebounder. I think he's fearless. He did make a shot over Edey, the 7'4" player. So I like that. One thing that still concerns me, though, a little bit, and even with Canet and some of the offensive weapons they had some droughts along the way. And they should have had a bigger lead than they did in the first half. Purdue shoots 20%, and you're ahead by, was it 3 at halftime? I'm like, you're in trouble because Purdue's not going to shoot 20% in the second half. So that concerned me a little bit. And the free throws, my gosh, they were awful. They've been awful. The start of the Syracuse game and the start of the Purdue game, they couldn't hit a free throw. That concerned me.
I've got a weird theory on Ziegler. Okay, and this is before he got hurt last year. I think he kind of, because he fell in the right place at the right time, kind of became somewhat of a well-known name, if not a star, around Knoxville. And I wonder if he got a little bit of the big head, because since he became a household name in Knoxville, Jimmy hasn't been the same player.
Yeah, he was kind of a sympathetic star. People loved the way he hustled, the story about the family's apartment burning in New York and all the money that they're raising. He was very appreciative of that. But I don't, I mean, you may be right. I don't know how to crack into his head and figure out what's going on with him there. But he's not played at the level that I thought he would early. But again, I'm going to give him a pass right now because he's coming off that injury. And maybe that's impacted his play at this point. But they need him to play really well. And by the way, Vescovi didn't score a lot, but he does other things to help you. I thought he made some terrific passes against Syracuse, which helped when Tennessee needed some baskets in that second half. So, and rebounding, he'll get you 5 or 6 rebounds. So even at the games in which Vescovi doesn't score, I think he's helping you in other ways.
Before I get into this, just want to give everybody a quick update. So Tennessee beat Syracuse on Monday at the Maui Invitational, which actually is being played in Honolulu right now because of the wildfires in Lahaina, which just want to send our thoughts to everybody in Maui on the island in Lahaina. I know that's a devastating situation out there. They lost to Purdue last night, number 2 ranked. Or they lost to Purdue Tuesday night, 71-67, which has them advancing to the losers bracket to play number 1 ranked Kansas, who lost to Marquette after Tennessee lost to Purdue. So Tennessee is set to play number 1 Kansas. Jimmy, I think I had a lot of thoughts about last night, and I didn't really know where to go because first off, I don't think one of the biggest questions I had with Tennessee couldn't be answered last night, which is, do they have bigs that can bang with other bigs that could take over a game that's necessary, which, as you and I talk about, I'm big on the 3-point shooting, but you're not going to have the 3-point shooting unless you have a guy that can score inside and take guys away from the outside. Yep. We didn't get to see that last night because the refs totally took over the game. I mean, they called, Toby Awaka fouled out, Jonas Adu fouled out, Ziti, the best big man of the game, had 4 fouls. We all wanted to see how Jonas Adu would handle Ziti, and we never got to see it. So can we really read too much into last night's game, given how the refs took it over? Or is that a sign of, look, the refs are going to take over some games in college basketball, and Tennessee needs to show it can hang when that happens?
Well, that's a good point. The officiating last night I thought was abysmal, and even with Zach Edey, I thought they called 2 fouls on him that were just bogus. It was
I
almost
agree.
like Rick Barnes got a technical. So we're going to do some makeup calls here, which bothers me about college basketball officiating. I do wonder about that, Caleb. I pointed out Adu against Syracuse. I really like what he did in the second half. So he gave them some baskets. My concern the last several years for Tennessee is the lack of a consistent inside scorer, and I don't know that they have that yet. And it may end up being a walk instead of Adu. I don't know, but they need to find somebody that can score 10 or 12 points a game inside, and I haven't seen that yet. And I think you're right. Last night was hard to judge because the officiating was so bad. Is Tennessee good enough to overcome that? I don't know. It's kind of early to try to determine that, but I do think last night's a tough one to judge because of the officiating.
So as you can see, I'm on the road because I have the biggest headset that's ever been created by man, and my my son
You get
picked
that from
that.
Sterling Hinton or
No,
what?
I got that from my son. It's a gaming headset.
Oh,
So evidently, I can dominate you at Fortnite or whatever they play now. So anyway, but we're driving to get the biggest headset known to man, and I hear Rick Barnes being interviewed by Bob Kessling, and I thought this was a really cool phrase in the pregame. He said, if we need to, we'll play 5 guards. And
mhm.
it wasn't necessarily that he would play 5 guards. It was just kind of like that feeling of I'm willing to break from some things I did in the past because suddenly I'm 69 and I would like to make another Final Four. That's how I read that, Jimmy. Do you think that's pretty accurate?
Well, I think so. Now he did actually, because I consider Josiah-Jordan James a guard. He did go with 5 guards against Purdue. He went with a small lineup
That was
last
after
night.
foul trouble, though.
Yeah, it was. It was. He's kind of forced to do that. Here's what I find interesting about Rick Barnes. I've noticed that early in the season, he looks like he's willing to break from tradition. For example, Tennessee in an exhibition game might shoot 43s. And then as the season goes along, it's 35 threes, then it's 30, then it's 25, then it's 15. So he kind of reverts back to his old school coaching of basketball as the season progresses. So they start out with one thing and they end up with another. I don't know if he's willing to deviate that much from what he has typically done throughout his career.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
let me ask you if you had to bet a mortgage payment, will he do that? By the way, new poll on the YouTube page. What is your favorite Thanksgiving side? Broccoli something, squash something, deviled eggs, or Hyams oyster goodness? Right now, deviled eggs leads. Hyams oyster goodness is in second place. So there you go. And I'm making it tomorrow, so I may call you for the recipe. Do you think being 69 and wanting to make, because if he makes it, let's just say he wins a national championship, his career is viewed entirely different with, I know it's a championship, but with just one championship, Jimmy. When we
Yeah.
look back 15 years from now, it's completely different.
You know what? It kind of reminds me of Mac Brown because he won a national championship and people were talking about how at Texas he underachieved all those years. So at least he has that on his mantle. It would be Rick Barnes would be viewed differently if he had that. I will say this, and I don't know that he ever went public with this. I think beating Duke and then losing to Florida Atlantic last year, I think that really upset and bothered him. And I think it caused him maybe to second guess some of the things that he has done. Like, how in the world can we get this close, beat Duke, and then lose to Florida Atlantic? So I think he's probably more willing to be open-minded and make some changes because of that one game. And as you mentioned, he's 69. He's not going to coach 10 more years. So I think he knows that the clock is ticking a little bit, and he'll do what he can adjustment-wise, or at least I think he will, to try to get to a Final Four. Hey, try to get back to an Elite Eight. It's been forever since he's been to the Elite Eight, and of course we know Tennessee's only been to one Elite Eight. So I think he might be more willing to adjust and to compromise right now.
Let me ask you guys both. Caleb, let me start with you. Who, if he were to win a national title, who are his peers? Calipari just has one.
Tom Izzo.
Tom Izzo has a couple, right? Doesn't
No,
have
he's
two?
got one. He's got one.
Wow.
In 2000, I think.
That kind of changes everything,
right?
Jimmy, as far as the way and now he's not going to win 2 or 3 and be considered. Yeah, I guess that would be up in the realm of the multiple guys, Patino, Roy Williams, those type of guys. But one really would change how he's viewed. So, Jimmy, why do we think he might not revert to his old non-shooting outside? Do you just the age? Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah, I'm thinking that because look, he's very disappointed in Tennessee's postseason runs, although he's not going to say that a lot, but fans are disappointed, right? Okay, here they go again. They have a really good regular season. They get to postseason and they get upset by Loyola Chicago or somebody, Florida Atlantic. So I think he recognizes that, and I think he recognizes he's got to do something different in the postseason. What's the definition of insanity? Keep doing the same thing and expect a different result. I think he understands he's got to make some changes to get there. One of the things I hope that he does recognize, look, you need to have a good defensive team, right? I get that. But you also need to be able to score on offense. And if you look at the teams, like Bill Self, he's won the national championship at Kansas. The teams that advance and make it to the Final Four and then win it, they're in the top 30 in defense, but they're also in the top 30 on offense. You can't ignore your offense. And Tennessee wasn't even near being a top 30 team in offensive efficiency last year. So I think that he needs to understand, and I think he does, that they have got to be more proficient on offense if they want to advance.
Yeah, I want to jump in on a couple of things. So, Jimmy, two big things. I don't really care if Barnes plays Purdue closer, if he beats Kansas, or if he beats Marquette. No one ever questioned these Tennessee teams if they can beat the top 5 or best teams in the country, if they can go to toe-to-toe. We know they can. We know this team has the talent. The question is, over a 6-game stretch in March, can they stay above the fray where they don't get caught slipping because of that lack of offense? I totally agree with you on that. And so even if they had beaten Purdue last night and if they beat Marquette and if they got to number 1, wouldn't answer my questions that I have about them unless they started shooting the ball well.
I agree with you. I remember, it was a few years ago, Tennessee played North Carolina. I think it might have been in New York, beat them by 20, right? And North Carolina won the national championship that year. So it's like, okay. Now, if I were to give advice to the Tennessee fans, which I usually don't, but if I were to give advice, I would say enjoy the regular season. Enjoy a win over if you beat Kansas. Enjoy the wins because the regular season ride is fun. Postseason ride is not so much fun. But if I were a fan, I would say, hey, I'm going to enjoy this win over Kentucky or over Kansas or over somebody else and try to have a good time with that and go celebrate really hard. Because in March, you might not be celebrating as much as you are during the regular season.
It's true.
Well, and part of that, I don't know if you guys
some oysters too. Yeah.
I don't know if you guys saw this Grant Williams interview. It was about 2 months ago. He was talking about conditioning under Rick Barnes. And I didn't realize how hard Rick Barnes conditions his players in the all season. And apparently Grant Williams was like, he purposely picks on certain players to do extra conditioning like during the season. And it doesn't stop. I think that I do think that wears on them in March. I do. I think that wears them down.
I've heard that theory that he needs to let up a little bit on the team, and so that they have fresh legs late in the season. That has been a criticism of him. I have been told, no, like I don't go to practice and all that, but I have been told that in recent years he's been better about that, lightening up practice, and you don't go at it hard for 90 minutes before a game. So I think he's gotten better about that, but I do think that has been an issue with him in the past.
If you could combine Jerry Green and Rick Barnes, you'd have the perfect coach. Jerry Green walks out there 3 days before. I don't even know if I ever told you this. 3 days before the SEC tournament, and he just goes out there and throws the ball up literally and goes, well, let's just have 2 hours of street ball. And a guy that we know, a tall guy with a very deep voice, said, I can't believe this bleeping stuff. 3 days before the SEC tournament, and they're running 2 hours of street ball. And it was fun to watch, but that's all they did, Jimmy. They didn't work on anything fundamentally.
Well, and if you didn't like that, you could just go rent you a movie from Kmart.
Still,
I remember that comment.
Yeah.
You know, but to be fair, guys, I know stories of Steve Spurrier, who's a Hall of Fame coach, quitting practice early because he didn't want to miss his tee time. And he would tell his players to hurry up and finish his drill so he could get out of practice and go tee off. So, and he's a Hall of Fame coach. So
Jimmy, Elias says that Barnes gets a statue in Knoxville if he wins one. Well, if they put one of those up, they better put one of Philip Fulmer because he won a national title. Or is that a conversation for another day?
No, I would agree with that.
Do you really?
Yeah.
I'm the only one that I thought. Okay, all right, we'll do that another day.
Yeah, I mean, they got statues of people over there that you might wonder about. But yeah, if you win a national championship at Tennessee, okay, Pat Summitt has one. Well, she's got 8 national championships, right? But she's got a statue. I wouldn't have a problem with that.
Okay. Well, why do you think that hasn't happened?
I don't know.